have someone very special. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Devangi, and I've been in the field of HR for close to 2 decades now. And I have worked across industries, but IT consulting being my pet spot. And what I love about being in HR is the fact that you get to meet a lot of great, interesting people who then leave a lasting impression on you.
Yes, actually, that was going to be my next question. What drew you into the world of HR?
What made me join, I'll be very honest, was the very fact that I knew that I can converse. I knew that I can talk. And the only 2 lines available to me when I did my MBA was because of that, either sales or then HR. But I'd done some odd jobs in sales in my vacations and all, and never really enjoyed it. So I actually did my HR MBA when HR was not in a term which is coined, or probably it was just being thought of. It used to be personnel management, so more related to the manufacturing industry and more around regulations rather than people care as such. And I feel glad that when I joined, that's when the entire revolution of changing towards people mindset happened. And yeah, that's what made me get into HR in the first place, the people part of it.
What's the best part of dealing with people or being a people person?
The best part is, as I said, meeting amazing people. It's like there's never a dull day. You're always not just meeting great people, but you're also learning so much from them, about them. And it just changes you as a human being as you go ahead in life, and I think that probably is the most satisfying part of the job as well.
Tell me a little more about someone who you met recently that really stood out to you.
So recently we've been doing some intern hires, and I met this particular individual which I really felt amazing talking to her, because she comes from a small town, and their opportunities are obviously a little lesser, and their exposure is also quite lesser. But then this young girl, she impressed me because she's gone out of her way to learn things, to actually go and start converse in English wherever she could. And because she realized that one of the best ways to do it is to become better with the language. And the steps that nowadays kids are taking, I think that really changed the view of how I look at things. Like there's never a dearth of learning if you have the ability and the will and the passion to do it. So yeah, that was an interesting conversation for me.
What is one of the hardest parts of your job, you would think?
I think 2 actually, if I'm being very honest. The first one is from a human side, and very, very specific to the scenario today, is laying off people. What happens more often than not is that the bad news is supposed to be passed on by the HR people, and as a human being and as a professional, you know why this decision is being taken, but that doesn't make it all right as well. You know the repercussions that the person will go through, what kind of how it's going to affect the mental well-being and everything, and taking that burden with you home is probably a very difficult part of our job. And the other side, the second point that I feel is difficult is that making business realize that HR is a partner, it's not a support function. And I don't think a lot of people are realizing that just yet. Fortunately, some are, but I think the percentage is very low.
Yeah.
Yeah, the meme that goes around that HR is known for rangolis, I think it's high time we change that. Make it more colorful on the strategic side of things, though.
Yeah. What is something that you would say to up and coming youngsters who are, trying to get into this field so they can get a forward look?
I would first say that get into it for the right reasons. Understand why you're getting into it. HR should not be anybody's last choice. That I didn't get into this, and which is why I'm doing that. And you'll see a lot of people will say that, I did engineering, but I didn't get a job, so I'll get into HR. So make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons first. Second is, like I said, equip yourself with enough knowledge around the business as well. It's not just your function, but how does your function impact the other aspects of business? So make yourself more aware of that. And the third one is just be ready to connect with people and come with huge loads of empathy, because that's what our job is all about.
True. Do you spend most of your days dealing with the higher management or the employees?
No, I would say I spent a lot more time with people on the ground rather than the top management or the executive committee as such.
Tell me some funny stories that you have heard from employees or experienced with employees.
Fortunately, I've worked with places where day to day itself is fun. There's a lot of laughter around, which makes it good fun. And we had actually a culture of playing pranks on new joiners.
Interesting. I want to ask you more about pranks soon.
So that was great that it was like so imbibed in the culture and accepted part of it that those same people on whom the pranks were played used to look forward to the new joiners coming in so that they
can play pranks on them.
So yeah, that used to be the interesting part then.
Can you tell me some fun pranks that you guys?
There were some very mean ones as well.
No, just something fun.
I can tell you two. So one was where our CEO was also involved, and our CEO used to sit in Seattle at that point of time, and he used to visit us like once or twice a year, and we just had a batch of new joiners come in, and this was a batch from South India, so as it is they were like absolutely out of place, Pune, like oh my god, this is a different world kind of a thing. And one of my colleagues introduced our CEO as an intern, saying that this person has joined and you're supposed to guide them through the day. And our CEO was a real game and sport, and he roamed around whole day with a pen and a diary behind this person. And this person really took the job seriously and actually told them the good ways of working and how do you give respect to your elders and people up in the ladder and things like that. So that was really fun. He enumerated that just shows how humble the entire culture of people around us would be. So it turned out to be a good prank at the end of it.
Speaking about culture, I've been reading a lot lately that you should hire for the right culture fit. What is your opinion about that?
I absolutely agree with that. Skills is something which is teachable in my view. So there is this whole model of iceberg that we look at when we look at competencies, and in that skills is just the top part of it, and there is so much more which goes underneath the sea level, which is your own attributes, your own cultural values, plus that of the organization. And if that foundation is strong, what you have in top can be easily built. So you should definitely hire for a cultural fit rather than a skill fit.
Do you think a lot of HRs these days are actually hiring for culture fit, or are they going after the skills?
There are two ways to look at it. Ideally, every HR wants to hire for a culture fit because it just becomes easier to imbibe them, to onboard them, and to really get them engaged with the organization. However, I do understand business needs come into play. And there are times when we are pushed to hire some people who are absolutely brilliant technically, but need guidance where the culture is concerned. So we do fall for that, and that I just take as like a balance that you bring into this world.
Interesting. I mean, on the same lines, I have another question. Sometimes, there's so much pressure to hire someone. So what happens when you hire someone who's qualified but not qualified? I would say if you hire someone who has all the right qualifications but is not able to do the job.
So they tick the boxes, but you really don't see the implementation. And I think that's why our interview process needs to change a little bit, because we've become so tuned to going through resumes and the answers that we get in the interviews that we sometimes get blinded by the fact that they might not be able to actually implement what they know. And I'll also say that it's probably not a flaw in the people, it's just the way we are built and the way the other system is like that. But maybe we can have an interviewing process where we give them a chance to really exhibit what they know or what they have learned. And then I would say we should go a step ahead, and if we see that the person is not up to the mark, we really guide them so that at least where they go next, they know that where they couldn't clear and how they can benefit better.
True, I've seen that a lot of employers just come back saying you're not right, and then it's just cold after that, which makes it difficult, because how does one know where to improve and what to do?
Absolutely.
So on the same lines, I've also read a lot about personality tests and other kinds of tests. Do you think they're really helpful?
They might aid, or they might just become one of the tools that you can look at, but I don't think you can trust them just blindly without having any other frameworks or any other mechanisms in place. Some of them are obviously very good. They're psychologists who have spent years getting through that. So there is some merit to that. However, I would stay away from overviews of these as well, because then you tend to not listen to your gut, or you don't pay attention to your own own readings into the people as well. So I mean, I would take it with a pinch of salt, probably.
Speaking of interviews, do you have any fun interview stories or anything that's happened?
Oh, we have quite a few fun stories that we go through. We recently interviewed one person who wasn't understanding any of the questions that we were putting across. And obviously the problem was comprehension, and it became a funny interview by the end of it, because whatever we asked, their answers were very great, but they were
not what the question
what we were asking them. But we just went on for the half an hour because the answers were so good in a funny way. So yeah, that became quite an interesting interview that we had to take.
Do you see that the younger generation who's coming into the workforce is able to mingle well with like the older generation, or is there that disparity or some disconnect, I would say?
There's I think they're more open than we give them credit for. It's quite well known that you'll hear that Gen Zs are like quite a hip hop generation and all that, but it's not true. I think they are quite switched on. They get along as well. They want to spend time with you. However, I think it requires both the generations to sit down and understand how they can meet in the midway, in not being judged from either of the sides. So yeah, they are quite open. The only thing is the ways of working are very different, so you need some time to get used to it. I also feel that that's the generation which really lives for themselves, and I mean that in a good way. I don't mean that as a flaw at all. I think it's great that people are realizing that you come before anybody else. But for the older generation, it becomes difficult when they see that loyalty is not probably on top of their list. So in that way, they're different. But I love talking to them.
Yeah, I think they bring a whole set, like the way they look at everything is so different. So it gives you a different viewpoint of everything.
Absolutely, and they seem to know so much more than we do somehow. Maybe it's got to do with the learning and development that we spoke about.
Also, social media would play a part, I think.
A lot, I think a lot.
It's been great chatting with you. Just before we end the conversation, is there any piece of advice that you'd like to give to up-and-coming HRs or someone who's already in the field? Some tips, tricks, something with all the years of experience that you've had?
My advice to current HR colleagues would probably be the same, that learn more about the business, get a voice on the table. You have a lot of things to say, just make sure that you find the audience to hear you. And the second thing I would tell them is that the world is changing, and probably we need to start looking at and paying much more attention to the well-being of the people, and not just the frameworks and the strategies around things.
I agree completely. Had a great time chatting with you. Have a lovely day ahead.
Thank you so much.
Hope to see you soon.
Same here. All of you, thank you so much for doing this. I really loved it. I didn't know I had all these answers in me, so thanks for that.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.